Welcome back, everybody, to another lesson. Today we are going to be doing variables with fractions part 2. So what do I mean by that? Well, we're going to have variables with fractions with these type of problems. Say we have x plus 1/30 is equal to 1/10. X plus 1/30 equals 1/10. So what you would have to do now, kind of like what we did with whole numbers, we want to get the x by itself, so we need to subtract 1/30 from both sides. So it's going to be x plus 1/30 minus 1/30 is equal to 1/10, and then we got to subtract 1/30 from 1/10, because what you do to one side, you also must do to the other. Alright, so on the left side, you have 1/30 minus 1/30. That'll be 0, because anything minus itself is 0. So you'll be left with x is equal to 1/10 minus 1/30. Now we're reduced to a subtraction of fractions. Again, we need to get a common denominator. Well, we can clearly see 10's a factor of 30. So it looks like 30 is going to be your least common denominator. So what that's going to do, in order to convert 10 to 30, you got to multiply it by 3. So you'll have 10 times 3 for your denominator for the first expression, and we got to do that to the numerator also, since we did it to the denominator. You'll have 1 times 3 minus 1/30. The 1/30 can be left alone because it's already in the least common denominator form. So then you'll work through your multiplication. 1 times 3 is 3 over 10 times 3, which is 30. So you'll have 3/30 minus 1/30. Now, since you have the same denominator, you can go ahead and subtract. 3 minus 1 is 2/30. So, but we can see that 2 and 30, 2 is a factor of 30. You can factor out a common 2. So if you divide both terms by 2, if you divide both the numerator and denominator by 2, you'll get 1 for the numerator, because 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 30 divided by 2 is 15. So you'll have an answer of x equals 1/15, and that would be your final answer. Alright, I got more like it. I do have more like it. Can erase that first one. Okay, what do we got here? Alright, this one is not going to be bad at all. We have y plus 9/12 is equal to 11/12. Alright, so again, we want to get y by itself, so we're going to have to subtract 9/12 from both sides. So you'll have, whoops, let me use a different color for working the solution. I like to write the problem in one color and the solution set in another. So you'll have y plus 9/12 minus 9/12 is equal to 11/12 minus 9/12. Okay, so we can see on the left-hand side, 9/12 minus itself gives you 0, so you'll have y by itself. Y will be equal to 11/12 minus 9/12. Well, on this problem, they were kind. You already got the same denominator for both terms, so all you got to do is a simple subtraction. 11 minus 9 is 2. You'll have 2/12. However, you're not done yet. 2 is a common factor of both 2 and 12, so if you divide the numerator and denominator by 2, you'll get 1 for the numerator and 6 for the denominator. So y equals 1/6. And that would actually be your final answer. What do we got next? All right. We have 2/3 plus t is equal to 4/5. So 2/3 plus t equals 4/5. Again, as we can see, the goal is to get t by itself. So in order to do that, you're going to have to subtract 2/3 from both sides. So you'll have 2/3 plus t minus 2/3 is equal to 4/5 minus 2/3. Alright, so 2/3 minus 2/3, that's 0. You'll have t by itself. Now you're left with t equals 4/5 minus 2/3. Now in this one, we can see that 3 is not a factor of 5. We definitely know that. So we got to find the least common multiple of both of those numbers of 3 and 5 in order to get the least common denominator. Let's work that out on the side. So let's see, least common multiple, let's see. Let's start with 3 since it's a smaller number. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 4, 12. And then we got 3 times 5, 15. Everybody see that? Okay. How about for 5? 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times 2, 10. 5 times 3, 15. Well, we could stop right there. We just found our least common multiple. The least common multiple is going to be 15. So we know the LCD is equal to 15. That tells you what the common denominator is going to be then. It's going to have to be 15. So we need to convert that. So we start with the 4/5. In order to convert 5 into a denominator of 15, we got to multiply by 3. So you'll have 5 times 3 for your denominator, but you got to do it to the numerator, so you'll also have 4 times 3 for your numerator. Now we have to convert that 2/3 into a denominator of 15. Well, in order to convert 3 into 15, you got to multiply by 5. So you'll have 3 times 5 for the denominator, but then you'll have 2 times 5 for the numerator. So go ahead, we'll work through the multiplication. 4 times 3 is 12. 5 times 3 is 15. Minus, work through the multiplication for the second term. 2 times 5 is 10. 3 times 5 is 15. Now that you have both terms having the same denominator, you can go ahead and subtract them. So what is 12 minus 10? Oh, that's going to be 2. The denominator stays 15. And we can see it's in its simplest form. We cannot do anything else with it. We cannot factor 2 and 15. They don't factor with each other. So t is going to be equal to 2/15. Final answer. Okay, let's erase some of this. Alright, I got 3 more. I do have 3 more here. I have 2/3 plus p equals 7/8. So I got 2/3 plus p equals 7/8. Again, we want to get the p by itself, so we're going to have to subtract 2/3 from both sides. So you'll have 2/3 plus p minus 2/3 equals 7/8, also minus 2/3. Alright, 2/3 minus 2/3 is 0, so that'll leave P all by itself. That'll be equal to 7/8 minus 2/3. Now, again, we can clearly see that 3 is not a factor of 8. So we got to go through, figure out the least common denominator for them. So least common multiple of, we'll start with 3. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 4 is 12. 3 times 5 is 15. 3 times 6 is 18. 3 times 7 is 21. 3 times 8 is 24. Well, 24 there. Let's do some common multiples of 8. 8 times 1 is 8. 8 times 2, well, that's going to be 16. 8 times 3 is 24. Well, we could stop right there. We just found our least common multiple being 24. So the LCD, the least common denominator, is 24. Okay, that tells us these two denominators, we got to convert them into denominators of 24. How do we do that? Start with your 7/8. In order to convert the 8 into a 24, you got to multiply by 3. So you'll have 8 times 3 as your denominator, but we also got to do it to the numerator. So you'll have 7 times 3 in your numerator, minus, then we got to deal with the 2/3. Well, in order to convert 3 into 24, we got to multiply by 8. So you'll have 3 times 8 in your denominator, but you're going to have to do 2 times 8 because you also got to do it to the numerator. Okay, now we need to work through some multiplication. So on your first term, 7 times 3 is 21 over 8 times 3, which is 24, minus, now do the multiplication on the second term, you'll have 16 over 24. Now that we have the same denominator, we may go ahead and subtract, which is going to be equal to 5/24. And as we can clearly see, we cannot factor 5 and 24. It just doesn't work. So P is equal to 5/24. And that would end up being your final answer, is 5/24. Got 2 more problems, and we're done with the lesson. Almost. Thank you everybody for being here. I do appreciate you. I hope this is helping you. I really hope I'm helping you. That's my goal. I want to make math less scary. I want to help people, show them what to do in a way that's easy for them. Okay, so I have x plus 1/3 is equal to 5/6. So again, we're going to go ahead, we want to get x by itself, so we need to subtract 1/3 from both sides. So that would entail x plus 1/3 minus 1/3 is equal to 5/6 minus 1/3. 1/3 minus 1/3 is 0. That leaves x all by its lonesome. X equals 5/6 minus 1/3. Now this one is not so bad. Though they're not the same denominator, we know 3 is a factor of 6, which means 6 will be your common denominator. So we got to convert this, we got to convert the 1/3 into a denominator of 6. Well, 5/6 already has a denominator of 6. We can leave that alone. Minus, now in order to convert 3 into 6, we multiply by 2. So that'll be 3 times 2 for your denominator. But you'll have 1 times 2 in the numerator because you got to do it to the numerator. Okay. Work through some multiplication here. You'll have 5, 6 minus what is 1 times 2? That's 2. What is 3 times 2? Well, that's 6. Now you have the same denominators. You can go ahead and subtract. 5 minus 2 is 3. You get 3/6. But we are not done yet. Because 3 is a factor of 6, you could factor out a common 3. So if you divide both the numerator and denominator by 3, 3 divided by 3 is 1, 6 divided by 3 is 2. So now we are in the simplest form of 1/2. So x equals 1/2 would be your final answer. And I got one more problem. Okay, what do we got here? We got m plus 5/6 equals 9/10. Alright, so m plus 5/6 equals 9/10. Well, again, we want to get m by itself. So we're going to have to subtract 5/6 from both sides. So you'll get m plus 5/6 minus 5/6. That's going to equal 9/10 minus 5/6. So 5/6 minus 5/6, that's 0. You leave m all by itself on the left side. That equals 9/10 minus 5/6. Well, bad news is 6 is not a factor of 10. However, we can go through and figure out the least common multiple of 6 and 10 and come up with the least common denominator. So let's do that. Least common multiple of 6. We'll start with 6. So 6 times 1 is 6. 6 times 2 is 12. 6 times 3 is 18. 6 times 4 is 24. 6 times 5, well, that's 30. Now we need some common multiples of 10. What is 10 times 1? Well, that's going to be 10. 10 times 2, 20. 10 times 3, 30. And we could stop right there. We have just found our least common multiple for both numbers. So that means the least common denominator is 30. So we need to go ahead. We need to convert both of these denominators into 30. So let's start with the first term, 9/10. How are we going to convert 10 into 30? Multiply by 3. So you'll have 10 times 3 for your denominator, which means you got to do 9 times 3 in the numerator. Minus, now we're dealing with the 5/6. How do we convert 6 into 30? You multiply by 5. So you'll have 6 times 5 for your denominator, which means you'll have to have 5 times 5 for your numerator. There we go. Now we just got some multiplication to work through. So, your first term, what is 9 times 3? That's 27. 10 times 3, that's 30. Minus, what is 5 times 5? Well, that's 25. What is 6 times 5? Well, that's 30. We have now reached the same common denominator, so we can go ahead and subtract. 27 minus 25 is 2. So that leaves you with 2/30. But we see 2 is a factor of 30. 2 is a factor of 2 and of 30. So that means we can divide both the numerator and denominator by 2. If you divide 2 by 2, you get 1. If you divide 30 by 2, you get 15. So now that you have 1/15, you can't reduce it any further. So you got your final answer. So that means m has to equal 1/15. And that's how you would write your answer. So basically, you can think of the lesson we just did as a grand review of subtracting fractions. I do have the previous videos available if you miss subtracting fractions or adding fractions. Adding and subtracting, you do them the same way. You find the least common denominator. The only difference is one you're adding, one you're subtracting. That's really it. But I think that'll do it for today's lesson. Next lesson will be about mixed numbers and improper fractions. Have a good one.